You are getting ready to listen to the voice of Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, 2004 Olympian, four-time national judo champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, author, speaker, and coach.
Hey, what's going on, man? Welcome to another edition of Coffee With Rhadi. This is Rhadi Ferguson, 2004 Olympian, four-time national judo champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, author, speaker, and coach. And I'm here right now with two of my good friends. Now, I can tell you a lot about them, but they do much better telling you about themselves. So, you know about me. I'm going to let Dr. Ericka and Dr. Gino introduce themselves and kind of give a little background about how we met. Let's just do ladies first.
Oh, thank you so much. I think you could have done a great job introducing me, but I'll do it. I'll take the weight off of you.
All right. So I think Dr. Ericka is trying to test me to see if
I'm not trying to test you. I'm saying
I went to Howard University, and you really can't get no better than Howard University unless you go to Spelman. Okay.
Thank you. I went to Spelman.
She went to Spelman. I told my daughter the other day, if you don't go to Howard University, you can't go to Spelman, and that's it. She went to Spelman, graduated from Spelman, did her fellowship at Harvard University. She is absolutely brilliant. She's a board certified physician. She practices psychiatric medicine. She's a psychiatrist. She's brilliant. But I've never met her personally, but she's been on one of my other podcasts with one of my friends from Howard University, Coach B. Moore, the Super Fantastic Show. But we've met virtually, and we were supposed to meet last year on a vacation, but we weren't in the same place at the same time because she was building and growing her business. But I'll let her tell more about herself. But I think she was just trying to see if I actually read the bio. I did read the bio. I read everything.
Yes, apparently. I mean, I have a lot of faith in everyone that went to Howard, even though I didn't go. But my name is Dr. Ericka. As he said, I'm a double board certified psychiatrist, integrative lifestyle coach, and best-selling author. I help women who are disgruntled with life and love redefine and reboot their dreams in order to attract more aligned people and opportunities. And I have lots and lots of years in experience in beauty. I can't even talk this morning. See, this is what happens when people get you up too early in the morning. For real.
Tell them, Dr. Ericka, tell them.
I have a whole lot of experience in human behavior, and I'm known for being a traveling psychiatrist. But see, this one has me up super early, so if I'm a little tongue-tied, just cut me a little slack, please.
Listen, it's wonderful to have you on the podcast. Dr. Gino.
Sir. It is such a pleasure. I got to tell you, they say that you are who you keep, and this morning I'm keeping some pretty good company. So I'm loving the vibes. Dr. Ericka, it's such a pleasure to be on this show with you. And Dr. Ferguson, of course, it's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and have wonderful conversations. So as Dr. Ferguson mentioned, my name is Dr. Gino Collura. I'm a neuroanthropologist. So that means that my PhD is in a unique fusion between neuroscience and cultural medical anthropology. So born and raised Tampa, Florida. My family is Cuban and a little itty bitty slice of Sicilian. And so you can imagine what holidays are like for us and what our day in, day out is like. So went to University of South Florida for my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree. So I can't rock the Howard flag, I can't rock Spelman, but go Bulls, go Bulls. I'll rock that with pride. My research and what I specialize in outside of the discipline itself has to do with combative reassimilation. So folks who have gone through and spent time in the military, folks who are first responders as well, dealing with trauma, high levels of stress, being able to assimilate and weave in and out of different social domains and different social spheres as it pertains to getting some sort of normalcy in life. It's very difficult for folks who have gone through high levels of trauma repeatedly over and over and over again. To be kind of on the same sheet of music for most of us other folks who've never experienced things like that. So I specialize on the neurological side of what's happening there and the cultural side of what's happening there. So I am a student of Dr. Rhadi Ferguson's as well. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo student of his and have been for quite a long time. So the punishment is real, folks. The punishment is real.
well, let's start there and then kind of move our way into what we're dealing with globally and locally. And even on the familial side with the coronavirus situation. But let's start with the reassimilation, because I know with myself, I was not in combat, but I was in a combat sport. And not only was I in a combat sport, Dr. Ericka, I was around some high elite level performers, and sport psychologists will tell you that based upon the presentation of elite level athletes, they have markers which are on the diagnoses of narcissistic personality disorder, but not all high level athletes are narcissists. You get closer to that, to the right of the bell curve, when you deal with people like elite level bodybuilders, elite level fitness competitors. But even elite level performers, they're fine because they're around themselves. When we have to assimilate into the general population, which we call gen poppers, it doesn't work well for us, because we look at what we do as being normal, and we look at that level of hitting, beating, punching as being normal. Like the tactile sensation that I get throughout the day is normal for me. I'm actually going through withdrawal because I don't realize that how much I'm hitting, beating, touching, rolling around, grabbing, choking. Like choking you is normal for me, but that's not, you can't walk around and say, hey man, Larry, I really need to choke you today. I mean, that doesn't work well.
Yeah, I haven't choked anybody.
Exactly. But I'm personally, on the judo and jiu-jitsu side, I'm personally having a tough time assimilating to this current situation, and it's kind of mirroring what I was dealing with when I came out of the Olympics, going into the Gen Pop. And if both of you can kind of give some, I guess advice to individuals who are dealing with that shift from one pool to the next pool, or what we would call old norm to new norm, or for you, Dr. Gino, from the combative to the non-combative side, man, I'd appreciate it before we dive in.
Yes, ladies first. Dr. Ericka, if you want to tackle it, then I'll follow suit.
And I was thinking, I'd love to hear what this, you're like one of the first anthropologists I've met in humankind. Like I've met so I was actually thinking, I'm wondering what he's going to say.
Right,
that's fair enough.
It comes from the combative side. So even though it's not what I've noticed, my friends, man, Navy SEALs, Secret Service guys, CIA guys, Army Rangers, we all get together and talk about hurting people. And, and like, they talk about killing people. I only talk about hurting people. And for them, it's normal. And they say, hey, man, I enjoy talking to you. You make me feel like I'm normal.
Yeah, so what's really interesting about that, Dr. Ferguson, so it's a question of alignment, right? And so when you think of the value system that drives you as an elite level competitor, right, which 0.00001% of the global population can even begin to understand. When you have to go in and go back into that general pop, right, when you're diving back into being able to have a normal conversation with other folks, obviously you're normal because of your value system, which has a ripple effect into your work ethic and what is important to you from a priority perspective. There's going to be challenges there, right? And so because you have over decades, you've inculcated certain models, right? There are neurological models that have been conditioned, neural pathways that have been conditioned that, no, if you're going to do it, this is the way you do it, right? Don't slack, don't give me none of this 50% stuff. There's a right way and a wrong way. When you live in a world of absolutes, right? For the military, mission success or mission failure. That's it, black and white. There's nothing else, right? As an elite level competitor, you win or you didn't win, right? And if you didn't win, what did you learn to make yourself better for the next time? And you go hard, right? Making sure that you fill in those gaps. That is a mentality in a society that prides itself off of being rational, and everything is rationalized. Oh, I lost, but this is why. Oh, no, I didn't do as good because this is why, right? It is very difficult. There's a misalignment there, right? And when you're having to deal with that misalignment, what is wrong with these people? Like, are you bad about it or are you not? Because if you are, this is how you do it. And if you're not, I didn't want to talk to you, right? And so,
I end up living this separate life, but it's always been like that because the pyramidal structure of performance, the leader at the top, the non-leader at the bottom, and And it's always been like that. But what happens to me is, and other people like me, is you end up living a life that is, you're affected by argumentum ad populum, meaning there's so many people at the bottom who believe what they believe, and they're on the belief system that if everybody's saying it, it must be true. So they believe that, oh man, you need balance. Oh, listen, you don't have to go that hard. Kind of take care of yourself. And I said, well, how you supposed to win like that? I don't understand how you're supposed to win. And you're guided by your value system. The value system is just very, very different. It's even difficult at times for me to understand my son. Because my son says, hey man, I want to be a Division I football player. I said, no problem, man. I know how to do that. My dad was a Division I football player, Heisman Trophy candidate. My dad's very same way. Like my dad said, well, did you get up? Did you work out this morning? He's like, no, I didn't work out this morning. He said, well, how the hell do you think you're going to become a Division I football player if you're not working out in the morning and you live in South Florida? He said, buddy, when the coronavirus hit, summer practice started that day. And then my dad slaps him in the back of the head because my dad's 65, okay? and that's what he does. I know, listen, that's what he does for neurological recalibration, okay? Dr. Ericka, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's effective. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Why am I having the best time and we literally just got started?
All right.
This is going to get good. This is going to get real good. I can just see it on Dr. Ericka's face right now.
I do not.
I'm glad I got the good cup this morning.
Dr. Ericka's not drinking coffee. She's drinking tea.
Yes, I am. I am drinking some green Earl Grey.
What were you drinking last night? Did your mom tell you it tasted like dirt?
She said gin matcha tasted like dirt.
Gin matcha. See, when you go to Howard, you just drink coffee. But when you go to Spelman, you drink gin matcha. That's because they got deep pockets at Spelman.
Go ahead. All this. I want to be like, how many times a day do you meditate?
Me?
To get yours in.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I meditate every day.
I know you do.
I do.
No more.
Me? I listen, I meditate. I do progressive relaxation. I'm on level 5 right now.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I psychically knew probably that you did, even though we haven't talked about all your habits.
You don't see me on level 6. I'm on level 5 now. I've never been on 10 ever in the dojo.
But see what the people out there don't know is, I've seen his levels in written form. This is my first time seeing them in visual form. I see how you type when you're excited and passionate, like Kermit.
Like Kermit.
That's the best meme ever. One of my favorite memes.
That's good, Dr. Ericka. I like that one.
So tell me, Doc, what can people do? What type of advice can you give people going from the old norm to this particular new norm, and I guess high performers? You deal with elite level high performers. Maybe you deal with them in sport, maybe just in academia, because people who are going through medicine too, who when you go to med school, you come out of med school and you do the residency, and you deal with people who orthopedic medicine, 10-year, 8-year, 6-year residency, emergency. Like those people are high level elite performers too, and they still got to be able to. Let's just take it all the way down to the black college side. It happened to all of us. Yeah, you could go and get your doctorate degree, get the 3 stripes, walk across stage, do all that stuff, but you got to go back home. And on Sunday, when you go eat dinner, you round that with everybody else, and you got to bring that thing down.
Yep. So
listen, if you don't, they will help you.
True. They will. Very much so. So in answer to your question is one of the things, and I think you both hit upon it, is regardless of which pool you're moving from, if it's being an elite athlete to, as you say, gen pop, regular folks, or if you're a business owner or you're extremely successful, this is one of those examples why it's going to be hard sometimes to have everybody understand your perspective, your values, what you're dealing with, what your stressors are, and what you determine as success or failure. So it's always important to actually find your tribe. And from what Dr. Rhadi was talking about, one part is people that were like-minded around being an elite and athletic, but also had physical contact. But for a lot of people, some of that also translates into people that understand what you're going through or understand your values. And sometimes you end up with this one tribe that understands your values. Like I have one circle that is all doctors. And we talk about regular life, but we talk a lot about doctor stuff. And that might be who I go to if I start getting frustrated with something at work, because someone that's not in my field may not understand why this gets on my absolute last nerve. And just as you were talking about, there are going to be some people that aren't going to understand your perspective because that's not their reality. So it's always great. And I really feel like there is that duality because you have different people that serve different purposes. So it's really highlighted right now that a lot of business owners are having conversations that you can't have with someone that's an employee. Because they don't understand the struggle. They don't understand all the letters. Everyone that's a small business owner has dreams about PPP and EIDL. And people that don't. So it's like you have to surround yourself and have one tribe that's just that like-minded tribe. Then you also have people that care about you and understand you, even if you all don't see eye to eye all the time. And then you also are looking for people that will help you actually grow. But I think one of the other things that's important, especially when you talk about some of the mismatches with you and your son, there are all these different personality tools. And some of them help you understand how other people either process or learn or deal with stress. So in those environments where, especially around family, or they do it a lot in team building, I wish a lot of people had more access to some of those things. I recently did one. I think the whole world's done Myers-Briggs, but I did a Colby. And I have to say, out of all the ones I did as far as dealing with other people, outside of like learning love languages, it helped me understand almost every issue I have with my business partners. But it's using all these different tools to understand how the other person is thinking. Because if you speak to them sometimes in the language of how you think, they're not going to get it anyway. So you could come at your son like, hey, you need to get up. You need to work out. You said this is what you want to do. You know you have to do A, B, C to do it. If you don't do it, you're a scrub. You might not use scrub. Scrub is a very dated term. But there's some element of learning what language is he's going to hear. Right. And it happens, you see it in your work teams, you see it in interpersonal relationships, that if you don't package things or process what someone is saying in whatever language or way they do it, you end up with a miscommunication that frustrates everybody.
Right.
And that was long-winded.
That's the market mismatch almost. Yes.
It's interesting, Dr. Ericka. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Ferguson. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
So one of the things that we use a lot, and we say this all the time, it's the quality of the relationship you have with yourself is the upper limit of the quality relationship you can have with anybody else, right? And so
I love that.
Yeah, when you are in a situation where you think you know who you are and you've been surrounded by folks who are like-minded and they share that same mentality, you're like, no, I got this. I know me. I know my purpose. I know my mission. And all of a sudden, we understand as human beings, we're social creatures, right? We feed off of one another. That energy is very real. When you start switching those domains and there's more time spent with folks who don't share that same threshold, that can cause crisis, right? And so what ends up happening a lot of the times is every single person, we all have an internal crisis going on at any given time. We all have our, it's the saying of everyone's fighting a battle you don't know anything about, right? We all have our own trials, tribulations, our own struggles. And whenever there's an external crisis that pushes pressure on us, right, it fuels and amps up that internal crisis. And so many folks speak to the external without speaking to the internal. Mm-hmm. And that causes continued disjunctures and misplacement and identity. I think what's really interesting too, right now, especially with COVID-19, folks who have had the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, they're in the hustle, they're in the grind, but there was a pattern, there was a routine, right? That routine has now come to a halting screech. And now a lot of folks who place their value system and the identity they held in their professional setting, They don't know what to do with all this spare time. They don't know what to do with this new environment. And there's very real neurohormonal consequences that are a result of that, right? I mean, when we're feeling stressed, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, your HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, it's going nuts. Yeah, it's exactly right.
I'm your visuals.
Yeah, I love it, right? So when that's happening, you're not used to it. Like an elite level athlete, Dr. Ferguson, you're used to it, right? You know, gotta breathe. Let me stay in the zone, right?
That's it. I'm starting to, as soon as stuff gets better.
Yep, that absolutely.
Bring it down. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, bro.
Exactly. So for folks who don't have that ingrained skill set, that understanding of how to manage that in of itself can be traumatic. It's like, oh my gosh, I have, like, my chest hurts and the weight feels like so much. What are we gonna do? We didn't plan for this. How would we? All of that stuff is absolutely trauma, right? And it can be traumatic. It's not in the sense of being in a horrific car accident or being robbed. It's the emotional stuff as well. And I think that there's a lot of emotional crises that even pre-COVID-19 that exists in this country. And what we're seeing as kind of the effects and the consequences has to do with some other deep-rooted challenges that I think exist across the board, with people knowing their purpose, people knowing the truth, people being authentic with themselves and what they know, and also the blind spots they have. How many of us we have no idea what our blind spots are, right? There's a tool that's used called the Johari window. I don't know if Dr. Ericka, if that's something that rings a bell, but essentially there's 4 different domains, but one it spends a lot of time on is those blind spots. I mean, I may feel like what I'm saying is normal and my energy is normal, and Dr. Ferguson could be like, man, he's out to lunch right now. Like, what is going on, right? Because I don't see it in your lens. And that starts creating misfires and disjunctures. And then it kind of creates and alters some sort of crisis or chaos in that relationship, which has a ripple effect.
I tell you what, man, and I'm going to get into, it's my podcast, so I can do it as long as I want to. This is so interesting for me. And to the listener, I'm gonna get to you too. I'm dealing with, I'm being a little selfish right now because I got these 2 experts on the phone. I was in therapy. I just recently went through a divorce, and I was going through therapy, and my therapist said, one of them said, he said, man, you need to go through life and read the captions at the bottom of the screen. To which I said, why do I got to interpret what people are saying? Why can't they just say what they're saying? He said, well, everybody doesn't communicate like that. I said, well, I can't go through my life reading the translation at the bottom of the screen of what people are saying. He said, well, if you want to, and I said, hey, man, I appreciate what you're saying. I said, you, sir, are fired immediately. Now, I fired him. That doesn't mean I didn't give credence to what he said. What he said was important. What he says, I do compartmentally, but I don't have the ability, and you've seen me, Dr. Gino, you've been around me. I don't have the ability to, and I'm working on it in those, like when I'm talking to a kid and they don't answer, I think to myself, okay, what are the words on the bottom of the screen right now? Because I don't, because this child is not speaking.
Oh,
I don't come from a place where you talk to people and they don't speak. I also don't come from a place where my family is, I say what I mean, you say what you mean, and then most people don't do that. Most people do this. And then they go about their business, and then they create background chats and, people, corporate America 9 to 5, emails with other people, come back around, and then they deal with the confrontation in I don't even know what that's called. I don't know what it's called, but that's how they deal with confrontation and conflict. They don't handle it face to face, which is outside of my scope. I don't believe that I have to dislike you to fight you. I can fight you, and that's part of the dialectical for us to reach synthesis. It's just a physical or confrontational thesis and antithesis to get a synthesis. But everybody doesn't come to, they don't reason like that. So when I think, come let us reason together, I think we reason, we can argue, we can have a heated discussion, and then we could just go on about our business. I think it was, I read a book by Thomas Cockman called Black and White Styles in Conflict that kind of talks about the cultural differences in conflict and how people deal with things. And this goes towards the whole coronavirus situation. People are inside houses, they're inside closed spaces. And if I yell at you, Gino, you yell at me, I don't believe that we fought. I believe we had a conversation. But some people process that as they fought. They said, well, me and Jimmy fought last night. I said, Jimmy hit you? She said, no, we fought last night, because certain people in certain cultures look at arguments as fighting, and other people, we don't see fighting unless you touch me. So as long as you don't touch me, we never fought. But if I touch you, then we fought. They will do everything to circumvent the possibility of touching, where we know I can argue as much as I want to, as long as I don't touch. Certain people have certain styles of conflict, and because they don't have the same style that I have, and because of how I present sometimes, even without speaking, they just circumvent the whole thing and then make their thing happen without doing the conflict. What do you all speak to for people who are in a house or in a confined space where they have different styles of conflict?
I guess I'll take the ladies first now.
Yes.
I feel like I did a church finger, but I'm not walking out.
You coming up to the front though. Go ahead.
So I think you hit upon a lot of really, really good points. And it's crazy enough that I grew up in a household my parents actually didn't argue in front of me. So
I've never had.
So it's like, if I get to the point where I raise my voice at someone, they might be out of my life for life. I did go to some therapy for that, because I was getting to the point where it's like, if I'm done with you, I'm done with you. But you might not know I was done with you because I was so calm for so long. But I think the thing that's really huge about what you brought up is why it's so important for people to communicate. Because if you do not communicate and talk, you can't, no one thinks exactly alike. You can't know what's going on actually back there. People can't communicate their needs. They can't communicate what they're thinking. They can't communicate even what they heard from you, because they may, I don't know why I'm pointing at you, because these folks don't know where you're at. That they can't, you don't know if to have clarity on if someone misperceived what you said or what's going on. So the first thing when there are these mismatches that come up, the first thing is to be able to honestly ask somebody, okay, what are you thinking? How do you feel? I need a little bit of clarity. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, because a lot of times, especially now that people are just up on each other, is if you don't communicate, you're going to drive each other nuts, and sometimes unintentionally, because no one knows how to meet the other person's needs. So if you don't communicate, the other person doesn't know they got on your nerves, or that you need space, or that there's something bothering you. You just might be acting different, but someone can't support you or react appropriately if you don't tell them, because people are stressed. So even people that have the best mind reading abilities are not going to be mind reading at their best right now, even though that's a pretty high expectation that someone reads your mind. But I mean, there are times where you know people well enough that you can have a conversation, and you, as you say, you know those words at the bottom of the screen because they don't have to finish the sentences, because you know them so well, you know what they're thinking. But right now, people that you have those relationships with, some of them aren't even thinking the way they usually think, so you can't fill it all in. But I think the first thing is just, it's so important to communicate, to ask the questions, to, if you are starting to bump heads, say, let's go ahead and just deal with it. But people have to honestly and authentically communicate, because it also doesn't help if you communicate but you don't actually tell the truth. Then someone's reacting to what's effectively a lie. Someone's like, well, what's really going on? Or you seem mad. Are you mad? No, I'm fine.
Been there.
And if you're not fine, how can they support you or change their behavior if you say you're fine?
Right.
So that's why I would start with communication and also communicating when you need space, because it's tight quarters. Everyone's not living in a mini mansion or a mansion. So you have a lot. It's one thing, I'm sheltering in place alone. But if you have a family of 4 or 5 and you're in a couple of bedroom house, or you're even a lower income family, and you know, it's like 7 people in there, you got 2 bedrooms, 1 living room, and everyone's just crammed in. Or you have common areas where everyone's homeschooling, they're working from home in one room, that you just have to be able to actually communicate with each other. And it takes practice, especially if that's not how you've been operating. But I feel like I've been hogging this corner, so I
think, Dr. Ericka, I think that was really well said. You know, one thing that comes to mind when you're speaking about communication is, you know, we live in such a unique day and age where typically the medium for communication now is written. It's email, it's text, it's emojis. That sort of conditioning process has transpired. So the idea of sitting face to face, and now you're going to have to articulate your, oh, here we go.
No, I want to add this point, Dr. Gino. My son was outside the other day when we were going to my parents' house. He said, "Daddy, why are these people outside in their chairs in the driveway?" I said, "Rufus, that is how people used to talk." Mm-hmm. I said, before the Snapchat and the Instagram and the emojis and all that, people used to sit down and talk. Mm-hmm. Like, he's never seen the old Cuban guys in Miami with the white shoes underneath the tree with the checkerboard. He's never seen it, Gino.
Absolutely.
They don't talk like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I actually had to send a text to him and my daughter and copy my former wife on it and say, "Hey, when your mommy and I text you, you don't need to answer." So I'm like, "We don't check text." I said, "Well, we don't talk to you through Snapchat." Like, Snapchat, Instagram, like, brother, okay, I have Instagram, but I'm not texting my son through no Instagram.
You are sending your son a DM?
No, and they don't even know about, they don't even know, thank you. They don't even know about, I send DMs though. What you say? I'm out here single, ready to bang. Listen, but I don't know if you even use your instant messengers. I don't even use half of mine. So mine was not the assumption you use them. No.
I like Dr. Ericka.
Listen, I would not. Listen, I was very, listen, on purpose, I didn't say I didn't give this circle that Dr. Ericka and I are also in, but I wish I would have met Dr. Ericka last year, but I did not. Praise the Lord. Okay. Dr. Ericka and I are also in another group, in a doctor group that we talk about in terms of communication, which is cool, because you get hang out with some doctors and talk. But getting back to your point, Gino, the communication style is different. And people who are at their 9 to 5, they are now in the house with people, and all the communication now is face to face. You can't circumvent the communication.
Well, and think about the process too, right? When you're in a 9 to 5 world, there's a problem, you don't go confront the other employee. You go to HR, right? So now you have a third party intermediary, right? Who's kind of, all right, so tell me your side, and you feel comfortable just right, letting it all out there. But now when you're confronted with that person who drove the stimulus in the first place, right, to where you interpreted that there's a misfire or some sort of contention, going back to the biology of it, now you have this rush of stress hormone hitting you, and you don't know what to say. You get choked up. You're right. Where does that get you? Nowhere productive, right? And so, you know, one of the things that a tool that we use, it's called a free list, right? And so essentially, you're in a house full of people, right? And if you have infants, that's one thing. But if you have youngsters, right, who are able to write down their thoughts, the idea of saying, look, I want you to tell me right now, what are the top 5 things that are most important to you? And I want you to go into your room. I want you to think about it. I want you to write it down, right? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to write my 5 down. And then I'm going to hand you my paper. I'm going to get your paper. We're going to go back to rooms and we're going to read it, right? And then I want you to write what you think about the top 5 things that I wrote down, and if you agree with them or not. Now you have something that's a piece of collateral, so to speak.
A model to communicate.
That's exactly right. So wait a minute. I see that his top 5 things are this, I had no idea. Like that's what's driving his, again, going back to values, right? Values are going to dictate the premise that's set for your priorities, right? And so at a fundamental level, having a clear, transparent understanding, that what's the medium? Okay, you want to write it down? Cool. Go into your room. Go. You know what I mean? Get your Kermit on, right? Dr. Ericka, I mean, just go crazy with it, right? But that is a very helpful thing. There's another thing we use called pile sorts, which those are a little predetermined in the sense of you write, 40 or 50 different items, and then you have folks organize them, right? According to an order of magnitude, what's important to them. But it's amazing what you learn, right? From gathering intelligence about people, it tells you a lot about where they are at a fundamental level, how it's different from where you're at.
And right now, the other thing is people aren't at their best. So I feel like there's also this element that there are people that had a coping toolbox that worked. It worked for them if things were predictable in the way they were. And when you start changing all these variables and things are different, they're home, they feel stuck, their finances are different, or their relationships are different because they're not able to physically interact, then that coping toolbox may not be adequate. So a lot of people aren't at their best. So things that would not have made them more irritable or snappy or sad or nervous their emotions are already not at baseline. So I feel like it's so important. Dr. Gino brought some really great tools and concepts to be able to come together in this time where people aren't at their best. So the expectation that you're going to deal with like the same person you deal with all the time, most people are not functioning and thinking exactly the same way.
I tell you what, I'm not a yeller and screamer, all right, in my house. Now, if I'm coaching, I'll yell, scream, and do all that stuff. But in my house, people are like, they don't understand how laid back I am in my house. But I don't. My parents did the yelling and screaming thing. That's cool. My parents been married for 46 years. I don't have no critique on what they do. I wasn't a yeller and screamer. I'm not a yeller and screamer. I think that a lot of people, and I also not like, because I know how I present. Like, I'm only 5'8", but I've been told that I present differently. I don't know.
You look much taller on Zoom.
I just see myself in the mirror. People think I'm a big guy. To me, I think I'm small because I played football. I was the smallest guy on the field. Okay, I'm right now about 245 pounds, but to other people, I look big. Now, I do recognize that I'm a different size when I see a picture of myself next to somebody, but I don't really think that I'm that big. But Dr. Gino probably thinks differently because we rolled around together, so I present differently. But because I know that, because I'm a male.
I'm glad you already put the context of the rolling around together out there.
in pajamas. How about that? In pajamas. I'm sweaty. Listen. And you have an open invitation. Tampa, Florida, Judo. We'd love to see that.
I got to work on my flexibility first.
Oh, don't worry about it. We got you covered like a blanket. All right. So,
I'm scared.
Listen, you should be.
You should be for sure.
But I tell you this. I think that during this particular time, the communication strategy of yelling inside a house is not the best strategy to use. I don't think that, and I have to tell people this, and I tell some of my friends, listen, if you look at yourself standing next to a woman, okay, considerably, I said, you got more lean muscle mass. I say, you're bigger. If you just look at the pictures, like Dr. Gino, when you're in a picture next to your wife, you're bigger than your wife.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. When you are like that, you got to lower your voice and just speak. Like, I don't have to yell at and I tell people this because my PhD is in education, for people who know. And parents come in my dojo and they wonder how, and you've seen me do this, Dr. Gino. I had one parent cry. She said, I don't know how my kid listens to you and they don't listen to me. I said, well, you're having a discussion with your child. You're going back and forth with your child. You're yelling and screaming. I pull your child to the side and I say, son, I will break both of your legs and turn your feet around backwards so that you know that you're going the wrong way if you don't listen to what I say.
I feel like I need to just shrink out of this frame.
No, but I said low, so don't nobody hear me. Dr. Ericka, I'm just playing around.
I'm just going to sit here and sip his tea.
But listen. I don't yell back and forth with kids. I've substitute taught before. The principal come into school, in the classroom, and one is how I do it. Because of classroom management, I am not yelling back and forth, as you said, Dr. Ericka, to get your point across, because as soon as you start yelling, there's some, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in that space, there got to be some neurological mechanisms that cause people to just, they just shut down. They can't hear anything that you say once you start yelling. But if you speak to them the same way that they learn how to tie their shoes, nobody got yelled at when they learned how to tie their shoes. They were taught in a loving, caring way, step by step. I'm a behaviorist, I'm a coach, step by step way. Somebody walked them through the process, and then they understood why they need to tie their shoes, the benefits of tying their shoes. And if you don't tie your shoes, step on your shoelace, you can fall down, you can hurt yourself. You got to go through all those things and explain what you mean, why you want something done, or why it should be carried out the right way, and then get the feedback from the other person. But yelling and screaming inside of a house where people can't go anywhere, that is, and I've talked about this before on my Instagram, and this is why I want to go with this coronavirus thing, that is emotionally abusive. The one issue that I really want to tackle here, and we're going to talk about some other things, is the emotional abuse that is occurring right now in the homes under these situations is very high and is very prevalent. And I don't think people realize that they are emotionally abusing other people when they do it, because they are not used to communicating like they're communicating now. You got people who are, I'm telling you right now, I'm able to sit back and watch my children more. My kids are in school. There's a shift where the teachers know your kid better than you do, even though parents, I know my child. You don't know your child. You drop your child off in the morning, you pick your child up at 4 o'clock. Those teachers are with your child all day. You know your child from 0 to 4, 0 to 5, from 6 to whatever. Those teachers know your child better than you do. Your child comes to your house, eats and sleeps. When you can sit there and watch your kid, and sometimes you can't say nothing. You just got to watch. You want to correct behavior? Just watch. You need to watch. Just see what's going on so that you can do like Dr. Gino said, you can sit down and have a conversation about, hey man, what was your thought process here when you did this? What were you thinking about when you did this before you did what I asked you to do? Do you think that was the right thing to do? Would you like it if you asked me to do something and I don't do it and I do something else and then I get back with you next week? No, I wasn't like that day. Well, so I don't like it either, son. So are you gonna make a different decision? Because that's the best way to do it, not yelling and screaming. Because I can't coach him at home, you did? But I'd like for you guys to talk to the emotional abuse that people may be exhibiting and don't know, and then how people can, I don't know, how they can fortify themselves within that situation. You guys are the experts. Go ahead, experts.
I love how you lean in and say that. He's like, y'all are the experts.
Right.
I'm going to set it all up.
And I learned all these speaking techniques from Dr. Gino. Dr. Gino is an awesome speaker. You see how when he bringing it together, he does this. All right. And here, he got you on the neurolinguistic program. I'm over here, and then I'm over here. Then I take these two things and I bring them here. And then he does this when it's time for you to come to the back of the room and bring the money.
Well, and then I'm looking at him like, man, his lighting is awesome. I'm like, he has the best internet connection. And he's got his little corner with the back. I'm like,
He got a black shirt on, white background. He went and picked the white coffee cup. You know, he trying to make us look bad.
Hey, this is my.
You can be proud of my living room. See, I got inspirational on the wall. You can barely see it.
It looks clean back there, Dr. Ericka. Come on, clean.
Yes, it is.
Okay, emotional abuse within inside the environment of the home. Go.
Well, the first thing is I'm glad you're bringing this up, because one of the issues we're dealing with, and this is where you're going to get the sidebar because I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist also, is that there is there literally, and pardon me for all my tongue-tiedness this morning, there are some real concerns about people that are sheltering in place where their home isn't actually a safe place. And one of the difficulties right now, especially when you're talking about children, is a lot of the mechanisms that would identify if a child was undergoing abuse are non-factors right now, because the highest place you identify them is at school. Well, children right now aren't going to school.
I never thought about that.
They're not going to their after school or before school activities. They're not in their extracurriculars. They're not going to daycare. They're not even, because the way we've shifted on who's coming into the doctor's office, most people, if they can avoid it and there's not much going on, we're not doing a lot of well-child visits and those kinds of things right now. So the first thing is that first line of mandated reporters are almost non-entities.
Non-existent.
So
I never thought about that.
And that's one thing people have been trying to problem solve, is you have one group of people that they just may be a little uncomfortable at home because they're not used to it, but it's not abusive. It's just you home and we just got to figure this out.
You can't talk to your girlfriend or your boyfriend, so you stress.
Yeah, but there are some people that it's really not safe, and for kids that are being abused, and also for people that are experiencing partner violence or domestic violence. And now you're stuck at home with your abuser all day, every day. So people are starting to become creative of ways and places where people can give safe words. They're looking at some mechanisms, especially pharmacies, where because people most likely will have to go there unless they get all mail prescriptions. So, I mean, there are some legitimate problems with higher levels of abuse. Now, what you were talking about, one of the things that's really important, and I think this situation really causes people, the place for growth is that you have to start learning some type of self-awareness. These type of situations are going to force you to have some type of self-awareness. Either you're going to get it or your life is going to suck. And that's just putting it in regular terms, that if you don't have any self-awareness, you can't pivot, you can't adjust to your environment, you can't even realize if you're not having healthy coping experiences and you're taking everything out. Because there are times where people aren't necessarily yelling because they're just yelling to yell, but sometimes people have all this stuff going on in their head emotionally, or they're overwhelmed, and it comes out like anger. It's one of the things we always talk about, especially with kids, but it happens with adults, is like when you deal with kids, anxiety looks like anger, frustration looks like anger, depression looks like anger, learning disorders look like anger, trauma looks like anger. It all looks like anger and frustration. And for adults, it can be very similar. Is that if you can't manage this, then it's gonna spew out. Either you're gonna clamp down and be totally isolated and not talk to people, or a lot of times the flip side happens and people, there's a term we'll say, they are externalizing. That they'll yell, they'll snap, and those kinds of things. So starting to learn some type of self-awareness, if you don't do it, you're pretty much gonna be stuck.
I think, Dr. Ericka, it's very profound what you're talking about right now, and I think you hit the nail on the head. The idea of self-awareness, right, and what it means to get to a point of having self-knowledge of what's happening, understanding why it's happening, and then what to do about it. I think what we're seeing right now is it's a modified form of fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so when you go home, if there is a constant association with, okay, before I walk in that house, right after my long work day, let me prepare myself for what's getting ready to come, right? There's a priming that's taking place. But then yet there's a conditioning process that has happened already. You already associate a certain level of stress with walking through those doors and the dynamics that exist there. When you don't have that reprieve, when you don't have the ability for the escape, flight, right, to leave, get away from it, the issue comes into place with how do you identify with that situation, because you are allowing yourself to go through it. So from a self-knowledge perspective, what's the deeper part of the iceberg there? What else is happening to where you're staying there, or whether you feel like you're stuck or you feel like it's a prison and you're confined, whatever it is that's keeping you there, you have to find out what that is. Because if you can find out what that is, it makes it that much easier to make the baby steps to get away from it in the first place, because you're going to see that from a self-respect perspective, from an ability to escape perspective, you have options, right? But it's so hard to see that through the forest that is all the trauma and the stress and the conditioning over years and years and years potentially, right? To break those specific models that you've become accustomed to. And it's not easy. It is not easy at all, but it's absolutely doable.
Hey, going back to that last portion that you said, my good friend of mine, Israel Hernandez from Cuba, two-time Olympic medalist at the Olympics, used to tell me, he used to always walk up to him saying, "Los ojos, los ojos." He used to tell me, "Los ojos solo pueden ver que su mente pueden entender." Yep. Meaning your eyes can only see what your mind can understand. And on that last part that you talked about, I think people are caught in the I guess the self-inquisitive conundrum of, am I staying, am I stuck, or am I trapped? And I've heard this from people. Some people believe that they're staying in place for the kids, and then other people think that they're just stuck for a period of time until they get one or two things, and then I can get out. I'm gonna get this thing going, then I'm out. I'm gonna get this going, and I'm out. And then there's other people who are literally trapped. Can't go anywhere without asking, can't access their car keys, can't go without being followed, do you understand what I'm saying? Don't have access to any money, don't have access to, what type of tools, and I know the tools are few right now, Dr. Ericka, what type of tools are available outside of, everybody's given that, I don't mind, I think it's the right thing to do. Everybody's given that number for people to call. However, on a psychological level, when you feel like you are stuck or trapped, what are the tools that they can use?
I feel like I got to sip tea on that. Well,
because you have some people who go to therapy. Here's the thing now. Here's the deal. And this is to the point where you were talking about. Okay, I'm a coach. I do a bunch of business, but I coach too. I also have a mandatory report. Okay. Like a parent can't come in my place and then slap the shit out of their kid and be like, I told you. And listen, I tell parents, I said, listen, I practice ramps up. I'm not physically abusive to any children. I said, I have mandatory report too. If I see you doing anything, I say, if your child comes to me, I got mandatory report. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's on a coaching ethics standpoint. I'm a mandatory reporter as if I was working in a school. All right. Everybody's doing telemedicine. You can't even hide to be comfortable doing telemedicine inside your house, especially if you're with somebody who won't allow you to have a spot or space, especially if you don't have Wi-Fi access, especially if there's only one computer, especially. So what?
I do have something for that.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and a lot of these things I realized partially they were developed. I don't even think they were developed with that in mind. I think they were developed partially because the shift in technology that people are becoming more texters and chatters, that now there are actually some crisis lines that are text lines. So you don't have to actually call. You can actually text. And there are some that are chats for people that like computer chats that you open up a chat screen. There's some that are literally crisis text lines that you texted instead of calling. And something like that, if someone has a phone, can be helpful. I think the hard thing is there's trapped because you feel trapped in your mind. There's trapped because somebody is physically trapping you. And those are two different things, because the solutions or tools you would give someone that's more trapped in their mind because they're in a mindset.
How can they know the difference between the two? And I'm asking you this because Dr. Gino's seen this inside the club. I can sit over top of a person and not even hold them, and they start hyperventilating because they believe they're trapped and they're absolutely free. But when they're in the situation, they got the squirrel in the middle of the road thing. They're darting back and forth and just lining themselves up with the tire. Like, how do they know that they are stuck and not trapped?
Well, knowing that you're stuck versus trapped, I mean, we're circling it, and I'll just say it. That's a mindset issue.
Okay, good.
that if you, and I think that's one of the reasons you do it in therapy, but people actually talk about more in the coaching world, is these growth mindsets or feeling stuck, or the scarcity mindsets, which are really the equivalent of being stuck. So part of it is, if you think you're stuck, but it's a situation where if you put the data together, you aren't really trapped, it's just in your head, then in those cases, then people a lot of times will then end up using tools from therapy or coaching to change their mindset so that they can, at the end of the day, part of it is understanding what you're actually in control of versus what you're perceived to be in control of, which is different than the person that is trapped because someone is literally not allowing them to talk to people, call anybody, go anywhere, or going to beat them up every time they turn around. But from part of what you're talking about, it's a mixture of the mindset. And then there are also people that are trauma reactive. They've had some type of trauma. So they would perceive, even if they could get out of a hole, or they knew if you tapped, you'd let them out, or if there's a spot where they could wriggle out. This is all of my non-martial arts.
You're doing good.
That they're going to perceive it, their body's going to react as if they're trapped because they're having a trauma response to something that has nothing to do with what you actually just did. Because it's even happened to me before. I was in my chiropractor's office, and you know those old school inversion tables? Mm-hmm. And I was in that sucker. I thought I was going to die.
Couldn't get out.
I had to find the cutlass. That I could not tolerate being confined like that because I couldn't get myself out myself. And I was like, never do that to me again in life. But no.
You need
never. But it's like, depending on what your personal experiences are, that can come into play in some of those situations where you actually feel more physically limited because it's a trauma response versus what's actually going on.
You know, what's really good about what you're saying, Dr. Ericka, I mean, the idea of having triggers, right? The things that happen, right, that set off certain pathways, and it takes you back to a time, to something that was traumatic. And it's amazing, the slightest little things that can do it, things you would never think that would be able to do it, that exist. But the interesting part is, when you look at symbolically, what does that thing represent, right? It's going back to some sort of early mental model. There's something, right, wired somewhere that you haven't confronted yet. You haven't looked at it dead in the face and say, I'm going to conquer you, right? And I'm going to make the harder choice, and that harder choice is to break the cycle of that early mental model. That right there is massive, right? Because we're talking about change. So Dr. Ferguson, right, you work with thousands of people all over the world on lifestyle change when it comes to diet and exercise, right? How hard is it to get someone who's never worked out in their life before, right? To change their diet, change their sleeping patterns, change how they're perceiving what working out is. Don't look at working out as hard and difficult. Look at each time you get the opportunity to work out, you get to grow, right? How long does that take?
Can you say that one more time? Sometimes I need to hear that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it takes a long time, and that's why we compartmentalize it. I have that company Switch On, where we do health and wellness. I remove all the working out of the way because they already have a negative mindset about working out. So I just focus on the diet. And they ask me, what can I eat? I said, you eat whatever you want to eat. I said, based upon how you want to look and how you want to feel. When do you feel good now? no, I don't feel good now. Like I said, then what you're eating now is you're gonna continue to have this type of thing. So what you have to do is you have to create the cognitive linking or with the behaviors and then back and forth, and then pull the affective side in as well. So I need you to start thinking about what you're eating, because right now they're doing mindless eating, and they need to do mindful eating. And when they do mindful eating on the cognitive side, then they're going to see the changes on the psychomotor side over a period of time, because they're weighing in every day. That's why I do weigh in every day, because a person has to link how they think about food, how they feel when the scale goes down, and then a visual number on the scale to keep up the psychomotor behaviors. Because choosing is on the psychomotor side, thinking about what I'm going to eat is on the cognitive side, and how I feel based on what I'm eating is on the affective side. And that's more than enough than asking somebody to go out and walk and lift and run and bike. They're not, until they get that part down and hit the mental switch in their mind, all the rest of the stuff that you're asking them to do is not going to work. So what we do, we exhaust those measures until they start getting to the point where their weight doesn't move anymore. And they say, man, my weight's not moving anymore. I said, well, what do you want to do? I said, what can I do? I said, well, you can't starve yourself, because I said, you got here the same way that you got where you started. You gain weight and you lose weight by eating. So we've exhausted how much you can lose by eating. So what do you want to do now? So I'm ready to exercise. I said, great. I don't have to lift no weights, do I? I said, no, you just got to walk 15 minutes a day. They walk 15 minutes a day, super, super easy. They say, I could do more than 15 minutes, but the scale goes down and you wait till the scale stops. When the scale stops moving, and you ask them, I am nothing more like you are. I'm a facilitator of the process. I'm coaching you. I'm hooking up the carriage to the coach to help move it along. I don't beat nobody, push nobody, and hit anybody across the head. That's not going to work. And it doesn't have any long-term value.
Well,
go ahead.
What you're saying, so it's a process, and it's a complex process at that, right? And that is with you helping, right? Now imagine for folks who've got early mental models of trauma, of violence, of feeling a lot of fear, who's helping them facilitate the understanding to confront that, to be able to achieve a level of self-mastery and self-knowledge to where they can conquer that, right? There are some folks that are out there who have that ability to do it themselves, to make the harder choice, to make that confrontation happen. The majority of us don't, right? And so it's a very difficult thing that, when you think of something as simple as I'm going to change my diet, what we just saw, that's a complex, there's complexity there, and there's constant reinforcement that's needed. When you're talking about making real-time shifts and how you perceive the world, the difference of someone being on top of me, right, and me feeling stuck and trapped and I can't do anything, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, no problem, slip the leg out here, I'll turn over, roll them out, no big deal, right? Because I haven't pushed myself to the ability to have the confidence to know that I can do it. I haven't unveiled that in my own personality, my own understanding yet. So think of how many folks right now who feel trapped, stuck, can't do anything. And what's the key that's going to unlock that lock for them, right? And it does start with asking yourself some very real questions, but more importantly, being truly honest with yourself about the situation and what it means to you.
Well, and you bring up a great point, and I think this is a good place to look at. There are times where people have expectations that certain services will fix them. And it's one of the reasons why it would be useful for probably most coaches to have someone that's a therapist or psychiatrist on speed dial. Because what ends up happening is people are searching for ways to fix themselves. And there's some things that there are a handful of people that can fix it themselves that most people do not have the capacity, because it was not designed for you to fix yourself. And if you ask me what's one of the biggest problems with our society, is there are a zillion traumatized people that have not had any kind of trauma treatment. And it doesn't have to necessarily be medications, but a coach most likely is not gonna, some of them don't have the tools, but the other thing is, that's not the service that they're providing for them to help you manage and treat your trauma. Now they can help you shift how you think to be empowered and make different kind of decisions, change your lens and have clarity, but they're not there to get you through your trauma. And what ends up happening is a lot of people are walking around with trauma reactive behavior that never actually got treatment for their trauma. It's having real life, real time consequences. And an Iyanla Van Zant book, or watching Oprah, Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, or doing a coaching webinar is not going to get you through your trauma, which will bleed into every single aspect of your life. So a lot of what I recommend is get your trauma treated, because trauma becomes intergenerational. Because if you're traumatized, then you have trauma reactive behavior. Your trauma reactive behavior affects your personal lens and how you react to everyone in your life and life circumstances. So it affects how you rear your kids, how you interact with your partner, how you interact with anybody you know, which then can shift into how your children perceive the world. So if someone said, what's the first thing, is if you have trauma, get some treatment.
You know, it's really interesting what you said, Dr. Ericka. I'm thinking of what you're saying, and of course, I think I can think about it from, an academic research sense, but I think about it from a personal perspective. So I'll share something about myself. So when I was about 8 years old, my aunt was shot in the face in front of me, right? So you can imagine the ripple effect, right, of being able to deal with that trauma. It took me about 3 or 4 years, right, especially at that young age, to really get my hands on what happened and why it happened. But it wasn't just the sessions I would have with my guidance counselor at school. It was other modalities that helped. That's what got me into judo. That's what got me into boxing, right? Things that within themselves were combative and were very stressful, but taught me how to deal with it, right? As opposed to just the internalization of it, and then let me have this conversation in my mind to make sense of it. There's other things that came along with it, right? So it could absolutely be a multi-pronged approach. Yeah. But you have to have that holistic perspective, and not, to your point, the expectation management. It's not just 1 or 2 conversations. It's a process.
Yeah, I tell people this, and I've recommended people go to therapy all the time, during the coaching and outside of the coaching. And I tell people sometimes you need to stop the coaching process with me, and you need to go to therapy, and then you need to come back. And I've done that, because I tell people all the time, I said, my job as a coach, is to help you move around your trauma so you can exist. My job is not to help get you through your trauma. That's outside of the scope of services for me. As an athlete, even in the coaching realm for health and wellness, there's a point where I can't allow your trauma to cripple you. You still got to go to work. You still got to cook your food. You still got to eat. You still got to go out. You still got to come back home. I coach you around so you can exist and you can excel. But you just got to go. It's like the person who cheat on the exam, and then you don't take the time to go back and study before the final. Listen, you got to go back and get all the information that you didn't get. You didn't get through. You got over. You got around, but you didn't get through. And that takes me to this point that I want to lead into when dealing with this COVID-19 situation. And I have an African-American female on here, and I have a Cuban male on here, both coming from minority backgrounds. How do we deal with the access to the tools to identify those problems for people who don't have monies? And I say this on the mental health side. I say it on the health and wellness side. There ain't no Whole Foods in the ghetto. Okay, ain't no Whole Foods. Where I grew up, you can't find no Whole Foods. Okay, there ain't no Whole Foods. People say, well, just go to Whole Foods. There's no Whole Foods. Okay, I still got family members. You go in the house, they using the neighbor's Wi-Fi. All right, that's just how it goes. So having access to some of these tools, how do we make sure that they have access to these tools and kind of address the coronavirus, COVID-19 situation and how it impacts minorities differently and the trauma that minorities deal with because of that? And I'll tell you a personal thing real quick. I've had a friend die from coronavirus. I have family members who had it and recovered, and the angst, the anxiety that occurs from minorities is a lot different because it's impacting us differently. So if you guys can talk to that, talk about the access, talk about how people are handling that situation on the emotional side and through physical tools to access, to identify and deal with the traumatic situation that occurred during this particular time. I know it's a lot, but you guys are smart.
I was about to say, I think that was like 20 questions.
Yeah, but listen, you're a black woman.
I mean, luckily I listen for a living. I was like, wait, there's another question. Another question. Another question.
I put it on the plate because I know you can eat it.
I don't know if I can eat it. I decided to get COVID fine. So, is it asparagus and kale?
You're right.
So I feel like this is going to be a tag team because there were so many little bits and nuggets in that question. And, on the front end is this whole COVID situation, and we lost. Did he?
No, I'm here.
Oh, he's there.
I'm pouring my coffee.
Okay, no problem. I was looking. I had to look over here because I was doing a webinar the other night, so I'm looking different places.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're editing this, so we'll see.
He's going raw with it, Dr. Ericka.
We don't edit nothing, Ericka. We go 100% raw, baby. We don't edit.
Oh Lord Jesus, it's fine. So
not too sorry.
So one of the things that's highlighted, it's not new, are a lot of these health disparities, and you're going to hear and see lots of articles. There was one that came out in the New York Times that had some data, and it's kind of gone a little bit viral about how large these proportions are, especially of Blacks getting and dying from COVID. That isn't necessarily all related to socioeconomic status and those kinds of things, because there have been a lot of health disparities data over the years that showed that even when people are well educated and have access, that they're still not getting the care they need. And one of the things that's been obvious in COVID, number one, is there's been the issue of access to testing for anybody. And that is not a celebrity, because we all know, we looked up and every celebrity and their mama was saying either they had it or they didn't have it. And you knew people that were literally dying and couldn't breathe and couldn't get a COVID test. So with dealing with the health disparities, it's been a complicated process for people to advocate to even get testing, to get treatment. I've even personally had people that I literally was calling COVID experts to find ways to coach someone on the language they should use or who we could call to try to get them a test. So in your everyday, you see a story about how people even work for healthcare systems and were a person of color and died and never could get a test. So, the first point of access part, there's one element that's going to just be having to work through all the issues in the healthcare system to begin with, but the other is trying to pair with someone that can help advocate for you so you can get your access. On the next level, because you did shift into something that was more around issues of accessibility to not only care, but also healthy eating or resources. Right now, there are issues. Some people don't have Wi-Fi at home and the kids are homeschooling or distant learning, and finding creative ways for people to still have access to what they need. And then when you're talking about not always in the hood, but if people don't have Whole Foods or all they have is the Quickie Mart, or they're used to cooking large things of pastas and casseroles, of creative ways that you can still look for things to eat that are lower cost. And in this day and age, one of the biggest resources, if you have the internet, is the internet if you have it. Because right now, number one, during COVID, since everyone's at home, people are giving away content for free. So one of the things I would say if people have the internet is, if there's some people that do healthy eating or give cooking ideas or those kind of things, I follow them, because some people can't do, I know a lot of people that are in the athlete space, and you look up Everyone Food Preps and they have 20 meals of the same chicken or salmon and asparagus or spinach, a million of them. And there are a lot of people that practically don't necessarily want to eat the same thing every day, or are looking for ways to creatively eat healthy, even though they may not be able to source their food from someplace like Whole Foods or Sprouts or Trader Joe's. And learning how to manage, frozen vegetables are usually pretty inexpensive, but still nutrient rich. How you can get things on sale and learn how to freeze and blanch them so that you can make them stretch. Ways that you can stretch food without it necessarily be eating every piece of rice and pasta on the planet. Learning other ways to stretch. If you're not a soup cooker, learning how to cook soups and casseroles that aren't just piles of pasta. But there are a lot of tools out there. And then from a mental health or even a coaching aspect, people are given everything for free. This is a time that I realize a lot of these are internet related. If you have the internet, you find people that, like, if you may have wanted to do their program or you like what they say, join their groups. They're giving away so much content that you can get damn near half their coaching course sometimes online for free. And then if you need mental health services, almost everyone is switching over to tele. And some of them, with the relaxation of the regulations, they're doing it through computer like we're on now, or sometimes they're even doing it by phone. So even if you don't have internet, you can call and talk to them. So even if you look up what their practices normally are, they're shifting to tele, even if it's not advertised. So you can still use the usual avenues of, if you have insurance, checking your insurance. If you don't have insurance, you can still look for what your community mental health centers are. Call your primary care doctor, ask for resources. And then there are also people that will take cash pay exclusively. And almost everyone is on digital platforms, so you can still access them just in a different way than you would before. And this is a time to, this is a time to highlight, there are a lot of benefits to actually having a primary care doctor. Even if you don't have insurance, get one, because a lot of the offices have social workers and other things. And your social workers are good people to help link you with additional resources. So if you're having this trouble where you don't have internet, or you're trying to figure out how to manage your bills, especially when it's outside of COVID, because right now they're doing some things that are more COVID specific, as far as a lot of the power companies are not turning off power and those kinds of things due to non-pays right now. But they can link you with resources to help get you, if you don't have a cell phone because your income is too low, there are a lot of programs to help get you cell phones with cell service or to have data access. But by having access to a social worker, it's always very helpful. So the other thing I'd say is get you a primary care doctor, even if you don't have insurance. You can still have one and not have insurance.
Yeah, I think, Dr. Ericka, that's such a great point. A lot of resources, a lot of rich content that you just provided. And honestly, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. You covered all the bases. That the only thing that I would bring into that would be own it. Own what's going on right now, right? And what do I mean by that? You mentioned diet, lifestyle changes, right? Certain habits, certain things that you can do that you have control of. Because right now, this is a situation, who's in control, right? And we could have that discussion, right? But there's a whole lot of things that are at play, right? From a global perspective and obviously here within our own community. But being able to have the understanding that, look, this is what I can do, right, in my circle, my sphere of reference. And I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. And I'm going to try to stay away from the habits or things that maybe I've done in the past of blaming other people, blaming other institutions. Look, we all know that exists 110%. How is that going to change and help you right now? And right now, what's number one priority? The health and well-being of you and your loved ones in your community. So you own that process and do everything you can in your power with the resources available. There is a sense of accomplishment that comes along with that as well, because there's small wins along the way, right? Whether it's, you notice that you've got more energy, you notice that you're losing a little bit of weight, you notice that the vibe in the house is a little bit different. That all matters with immune function, right? The smallest, slightest things can affect your ability to have a strong and robust immune system. And so anything that happens that's a stressor, and that gap right between stimulus and response, what you're doing with
Come on, Dr. Gino.
I feel like I'm ready for hand signals for when you say you increase your cortisol. I'm ready.
That's it. Exactly.
But being able to address that, right? That is huge, because listen, whether it's food, whether it's relationships, whether it's our own frame of mind, the goal right now, keep yourself healthy, keep yourself strong, do everything you can to be proactive to keep this thing at bay.
So the last thing I want to dive into is falls under the internet umbrella. I want to handle distance learning and internet conversations. I want to handle distance learning first, so you guys can give some tools and tips for parents who are dealing with their children who have just become new principals, superintendents, and teachers inside of their home. Some parents who are stressed because they have more children than they have devices. And I've even heard, because I'm coaching these parents. They have a situation where one kid wants to game all day, and the bandwidth for the home or the internet package that they had was not set up for everybody to be home. It was set up for, to be used sparingly as the kids come home, do some homework, print out some assignments, etc. Now you have mom, dad, 1 or 2, or sometimes 3 kids inside the house. Everybody's on phone, 3, 4 phones, laptops, television with the Prime Video or Netflix or gaming running at the same time. And I mean, everything is moving super, super slow. People are getting frustrated. And then there's still the schoolwork that has to be done. And you got 3, 4 kids on Zoom calls. Like, I have 2 kids that are on a Zoom call, and I'm on a Zoom call. And when I'm on a Zoom call, I sit where I want to sit. I'm not the one moving, okay? If I'm on a Zoom call, wherever I am, that's central station inside of La Casa de Ferguson, okay? So everybody else got to move. I talk as loud as I want. My house, damn it. You move and close your door. All right. So you see where I'm going now. So right. So these are the situations that people are dealing with. What type of tools can you give these parents who now, and understand this, some of them have either 1, lost their jobs, or 2, doing their 9 to 5 and doing the superintendent, principal, and teaching work, while at the same time communicating with the teachers. Let me say this before you guys dive in. Let me give you my piece of coaching advice. Many of you have problems because you allow your children to slack. I'm gonna tell you that. I'm not Dr. Gino and Dr. Ericka. Okay? I'm gonna give you a kick in the ass that you need. My kids will tell you, I don't log in to no Edsby, I don't email no teachers back and forth. I'm done with school, okay? I don't get on them about getting up for Zoom. I'm not waking nobody up. I got a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. I'm not waking nobody up in the morning. Listen, if I gotta take you to, when school was going on, if you miss school, when I get in the car, my kids would take, Rhadi, when I get in the car and we going to school, I'm doing what? I'm driving off. I'm taking off. If you're not in the car, when I start that car, boy, don't be there when I get back. You better get to walking. You have trained your children who have a phone with an alarm on it to turn you, I'm only on level 4, Ericka, to turn you into a human alarm clock. Either you train the children or the children training you. When your kids are self-run, my children are self-run. I'm talking about beautiful kids and the way they behave, their deportment. So I don't even, Rhadi's doing her work right now. I don't have to say nothing. When you all put the titty in your children's mouth, okay, and you steady breastfeeding them and they're 10, 11, 12, one of the mottos of Tampa, Florida Judo, Ericka, because we don't serve breast milk here. So if you sit there and put the titty in your child's mouth, your child is waiting to be breastfed all day, and they're not self-run. And this has increased the level of some of your frustration, because now you got to do all this extra work because you didn't do some of these foundational things. That's my 2 cents on it. But Dr. Ericka, Dr. Gino, please talk about the distance learning issues and how some parents are going to need to go to therapy now and maybe later.
Well, I think you brought up a huge point, is that number one, the expectations of what people are going to manage and do is very different now. And there are a few different layers in it, because there's the parents where one person's working and one's not, and they're managing distance learning. There's the other when both parents are potentially home working and someone's distant learning, and trying to manage who's going to help distance learning. Because I know one of the things that's come up when a lot of us have had conversations, and pardon me, since you're being unbridled, I'm going to do it too.
Take the bridle off.
That part of the reason this is causing some disruption in home, beyond just the fact that it's there, is there are a lot of men that were used to, I go to work, I do my work, I did my thing. And now in this environment, their wives or partners are getting pissed off because they're like, well, my work is as important as your work.
Correct.
This is a lot of work, handling all this distance learning, entertaining these kids, putting plans together and doing all this stuff. And all you want to go do is hop in your office, do your work in there. You get frustrated when your kid even says hello, hop on your Peloton and live life the way you want to live it, even though all the rest of us are making an adjustment. You need to do some shit too.
What you say?
And I think part of this is it's challenging people on so many levels, because there's managing how to come up with a plan, and the other is there's a huge shift in what people's roles are in their household. And I think what's going to be telling, as far as from interpersonal relations standpoint at the end of this, is who was able to shift and come up with some type of equity in those relationships and who didn't. But to actually get to the other part of the question.
Hey, but let me say this. Let me say this, because I've heard this too. The man who was out doing the 9 to 5, and the woman who's homemaking, now she's home with those children all day. So not only was her homemaking job is the equivalent of you working, now she's compounded with those kids, and then you get home. This is what I'm hearing for the coach, and then you don't want to help with the homework.
They don't want to do shit. I'm sorry. Not all of them. I do know some dudes that are actually helpful.
There are.
But there are a lot that are like, I work, and then, because I know some
like
people,
I'm working too.
There were like 2 attorneys, and they were literally fighting because they both need to work from home. But the husband thought that the woman attorney should be doing all the house stuff, all the distance learning stuff. And she had a job too. And I think this is going to be a point where people are going to have honest conversations around what these roles are, because some of these original gender roles were they were developed when women were in the house. So they handled the house because they were in the house. But I'm not going to go on that tangent forever. But with a lot
but that's a good point, because it speaks to what we started talking about, which is we're in a new pool. And so this is the pool that we were swimming in. That ain't the pool that we're in now. Like this particular norm is it is the norm. That's it. If we're going to have another one after this, we might, but this is what we're dealing with right now. And I don't think that people are dealing with that situation. That falls under this distance learning umbrella. In this distance learning environment, the roles of who helps out with what, logging people onto the internet, getting all these things, and then going back to my point, if you weren't proactive with this in the beginning, now all this stuff is compounded on you right now, and nobody wants to get involved. You have to create some level of one conversation, two, and some equality inside the house. So maybe it's your week this week and my week next week, but you can't expect one person to do all the schoolwork with the kids just because they don't go to work. Because guess what? Not only are they doing all the cleanup and all the laundry and all that, now they got the kids all day. And you think you're supposed to hang out in the office. That's not how it works.
I don't know about you, but I've been home. I've actually cooked every single meal myself since I sheltered in place. I've only had one food delivery, and that was because somebody sent me some. Is that I am totally, I can't believe how many dishes I have all day, every day. One person. I don't know how these folks are doing it with these multiple people in the house, because I didn't grow up on using a lot of paper. And right now, I can't even imagine how many paper products you use if you use all paper. But it's so many dishes. But to your other point, one of the things I remind people, and it's important for adults and for kids, is these are new routines. There's no expectation of having your old routine. You need a new routine. You need a freaking schedule. Part of it is kids do well with structure. They need to feel like something is predictable. One of the hugest things, and Dr. Gino brought it up, is there's all this uncertainty and people feel out of control. How do you feel like more in control? Make things predictable. So by having a schedule, that way your child has structure, you have some structure, they know what to expect and they know what the expectations are. And by being proactive with scheduling, it's helpful also with the issues that Dr. Rhadi brought up about, there are people that are managing internet usage. And this is happening on people that have lower end Wi-Fi and people actually that are successful adults. I have a friend that he can't ride his Peloton during the day because his wife is on Zoom calls and it gets glitchy if you're on the Peloton. And we realize that's some bougie ass shit. I'm team Peloton. But this is an issue that's happening across socioeconomic levels, especially because the internet is strange. I have high level Google Fiber. Some of my videos are blurry. I'm pissed off. I'm calling Google. I'm like, what the hell? I got internet, but I'm coming back. Is that the other reason to have a schedule is number one, you can take the unpredictability out. So one of the things you can do, especially for children, is you look at what their schedule is at home. You start at school, you start mirroring it at home. So that's not as huge of a shift. So the meal times that were school meal times, you mirror those at home. If there are times that may have been PE or things like that, that's a good time to do activity or fresh air breaks. Make sure they have breaks during the day because they're not going to be able to sit in Zoom forever. They didn't sit down in school forever. And have some type of schedule and predictability. The other is when you are planning what you're going to do is you plan family activities or things for them to do that, number one, decrease their screen time, because number one, it's too much access to information to begin with. Plus, you don't want their eyes strained and them just being on games forever. That can get rid of some of that bandwidth if you have other things planned for them to do that aren't just internet based. So this is a good time to cook with your kids, to do activities with them, for you to read together, to meditate together, play games, go for walks, do yoga together, to play outside, camp out in your backyard. There's a million things to do together that do not involve the internet. So if you start making plans to engage your family in other ways, that's another way to decrease some of the bandwidth that's being used at one time. So if the kids have an activity that you plan for them to do that is not based with the internet or a Zoom hangout or some type of virtual play date, then that pulls some of the internet down that possibly the adults, if they need the internet to be able to do something for work, and you can kind of rotate it out. So it's a way to also kind of manage how many people are on the internet at the same time. And then once you start learning how much bandwidth it can take, that there are times where you may be able to communicate with your job about a function. And if it's not a meeting, say, hey, is it okay if I do some of my deliverables at this time instead of this time because of the internet situation? And there are times where a deliverable or something you needed to do, it's okay if it's done a little bit later if people are set the expectation. But just kind of trying to manage things and come up with some type of structure really makes a huge difference.
Dr. Ericka, one of the things that you said, and it really does, it resonates, right? Structure, right? So the brain interprets ambiguity as danger, right? And so you're talking about a process that's been ingrained at a biological level, hundreds, thousands of years, right? And so when we're understanding that if we don't have structure, we don't have that predictability, right? We don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. We all talk about that surface level. Well, you never know when your last day is, your last minute. But at the same time, we have a conscious understanding that, no, I'm going to go to work tomorrow. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to go to gym at this time, right? There's comfort in that because we know what to expect. So with the shifts and changes that we have been dealing with and what we're immersed in, this pool, as you referenced, Dr. Ferguson, right? This new pool of water that we're in, new depth, new temperature, right? Different curves, different shape, and the texture on the ground of the pool. We need immediate structure there, right? We need to be able to figure out the do's and the don'ts, right? Well, what is defining those do's and those don'ts? Because if that's not rooted in what is going to produce an optimal outcome, we have a problem. But then it's optimal for who? It needs to be optimal for all parties, right? And so for human behavior and performance data has driven this home time and time again. Optimal performance happens at intermediate levels of drive, right? Not high levels of drive, which kind of counterculture, right? People would say, oh, more, go, more is better. No, that's how burnout happens, right? That's sports. That's how injuries happen, right? You go. You gotta train smarter, not harder, right? And so those intermediate levels of drive, is that happening for everybody in the house, right? Is everybody at that intermediate level of drive? Dr. Ericka, to your point, when you're dealing with a household where you've got, husband comes home, dad comes home, and he's like, hey, I did my thing. I did my job. I'm home, whatever, right? Now, let's think about that, right? Thinking about their partner, their spouse, do you have their optimal performance in mind? Because they have yours. Are you reciprocating, right? And then what does it take? Because that has a direct reflect and an influence on your children as well. If they see conflict, if they see a misfire there can potentially be misfires with their performance as well, right? And so being able to have that understanding of the intermediate level of drive for everyone, not low, not high, but boom, right in the middle, to achieve that optimal level performance has everything to do with having the right schedule, right? The right layout of what needs to be done today, what's the measurable outcome, and good job, you did it.
Man, I remember my mom telling me, she said, man, in a relationship, everybody thinks that they're doing more than the other person is doing. And that resonates with me in this conversation, because you have to find a way, as Dr. Ericka talked about before, and you said the same thing, Dr. Gino, to communicate what you're feeling about the situation. Otherwise, you're gonna have an argument and you're gonna reach no synthesis, okay? You have to say, here's how I feel about it. I'm feeling like XYZ, so-and-so, boom, boom, boom. I need some help with the kids. I'm feeling like you're in the office sequestering yourself while I'm out here and I'm not able to do the same thing that you're doing in order to be productive. Could you see how I could feel like that? Have the talk and say, how are you feeling about the situation? And you may find out that one person says, you know what, man, I've been a little bit unreasonable. But you have some people who don't feel like they're unreasonable. They think like that the children are your job, I do my job, and that's just how it goes. I think that a lot of people are going to, I'm gonna say it the right way, even though it's my podcast, I'm gonna say it the right way. I think a lot of people are going to have a what the hell moment when this particular situation is ended. Because it's going to provide, it puts some issues under a magnifying glass for a lot of people. I can tell you this as a male. I'm going to tell you this as a male. I'll give you some advice for those of you who are in a relationship or thinking about getting married or are married. If you're doing anything in that house that a mom perceptively believes are threatening the lifestyle of those children in any way, you are going to get left when this is over. If she feels like you're not providing the internet, if she feels like you yelling too much, if she feels like the kids are peeing in bed more because of how you stomping around the house, if any of those things are occurring, I am telling you what mama bears do. They're going to get their cubs and they're going to head out or find a way to head out. So all I can tell you is make sure you create a safe space, not only for yourself, because you go in your office and you have a safe space, you need to make the house a safe space for everyone. That's my piece of advice for you. All right. Now, move on to the last point. Internet discussions. The reason why I say this is because a lot of adults on the internet, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, and because we're home, we have more access to the internet than we did before. Usually at work, you say, I can't talk right now, I'm at work. Now people are popping in and out of their Instagram and their Facebook. And what we see right now, because we have briefings every day with the COVID-19 situation, not to get into anybody's political leanings if you don't want to, but a lot more political discussions are happening amongst colleagues and friends, teammates that didn't happen before. And people are seeing people through a different lens because people are coloring themselves now too based on the internet. Because people in my particular space, in the combat sports space, because they can't fight on the mat, they spar on the internet, and they don't know they're sparring on the internet. You've seen this before, Dr. Gino. I've also had to catch myself a couple times too, because people don't have the opportunity to go to the office and talk shit around the water cooler. So what they do is they do it online, not understanding that everybody is reading, and then they get into these heated arguments. And they take those arguments, whether they know it or not, those arguments impact their behavior throughout the day, inside the house, and they start having different conversations. Like, I was talking to Larry online, and he said such as President Trump, and then Hillary Clinton. And listen, all this shit gets brought into the house, and I don't think people realize how they're impacted from the internet arguments that they have, especially now. It's not like they're having an argument and they're sitting in the driveway and coming home. They're inside the house and bringing all these feelings and all these attitudes inside the home. So what can you guys speak to the internet discussions and arguments that people are having right now? Because they're more plentiful than they were before, because people aren't at work.
Well, I feel like we have a pattern here. I start and then Dr. Gino brings it home.
Hey, ladies first, always. I
think the first thing is just like, a lot of it has to do with protecting your energy. Mm-hmm. So I can't take credit for this term, but I thought it was so phenomenal. I'm going to use it. I can't remember who said it, but I'm going to say I wasn't the first one. So I gave credit. Is to curate your internet or social media experience. So what you want to do is, this is a time that people that are negative or just say crap just to say crap, or just have some beliefs that just make absolutely no sense to you, this is a time where you can either unfriend them, or a lot of these systems now you can unfollow and not necessarily unfriend them, so that you're not even seeing it to then engage or have the temptation to engage. Because when you start engaging with that, that's going to shift your energy. That's putting your power in someone else's hand. The other thing with the internet is being able to control the amount of information you're consuming. I am a medical doctor. It's a lot of information. I actually have way too much education so that I can filter through the information myself. But when we first hopped on, I think I'm in 5 or 6 COVID groups, 3 telepsychiatry groups, and then everybody else I know, and then what's coming on TV and those things. And you have to be very intentional and mindful of, number one, where you're going to get your information from. So what I tell people in general is, if you have a news app on your phone, pick 1, no more than 2 that give you alerts. You don't need alerts coming in all day from Newsbreak, from then like ABC News, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. And then if you get it, you're going to look at it. And then you end up with information overload, because you were never designed to take in that amount of data and then turn it over. So I think one of the big things is being mindful of not following and looking at a bunch of negative internet content that's literally like just going to bait you into some madness. The other is making sure that you're mindful about the amount of information. And if you start feeling like you realize, I'm on all the time, and I don't know about Team Android, I have an iPhone, and they give you a weekly report of what your screen time is. If you notice your screen time's way up, then you kind of have to check. If you notice that you've been on social media, or you're watching news or reading news, and you feel yourself starting getting on edge, and you feel your muscles tense up, or you just start feeling like your stomach's hurting, or you're getting a headache, then it's the time to turn that stuff off. I think part of it is becoming mindful of not just taking in information all day. And you have to do that for yourself. You also need to make sure you're mindful of how much of this stuff your kids are getting, because since this stuff is being posted everywhere, that your children can easily have access to information that's not age appropriate for them to try to process, especially through social media.
Yeah, Dr. Ericka, I think those are some incredible points. And one of the things that comes to mind is setting boundaries for yourself, right? And it goes in line exactly with what you're saying. How many of us that are out there, when things were normal, right, pre-COVID, and we think about interactions we had with folks, and even then, you've got banter on the internet that happens. And but what kind of value did you place, right, on those specific conversations, right? More importantly, if someone's provoking a question, right, there's something deeper with the questioner, right? And so do you really want to engage with that questioner because they're asking that question for a reason, right? So it's one thing to answer a question, another thing to answer a questioner. When you reverse engineer that, you're dealing with someone that you literally have nothing to do with. It's a complete stranger. What is nothing? No thing. You don't share anything with that person. So why would you value, why would you entertain, why would you give the most precious resource that you have, which is time, to that person? Why would you give your emotional energy to that person? Why would you let them influence your personality, your mental state at that one time, knowing that your personality creates your personal reality, right? And so I think being able to establish those boundaries, be able to say, okay, I see what's going on here. Okay, I'll play, knowing that it's play and nothing else. When you let it drive home and start to offend your beliefs, right? What you think, and it drives that passion, be like, oh, hell no. Right?
Kermit the Frog, right.
Right? Then you're succumbing to something that you know better than to succumb to, right? And so I think that is something that's really important, especially, listen, if you're having fruitful discussion that's got productive outcomes, then that's great. If it's critique, right? Dr. Ferguson, like different threads that you and I have both seen, right? Where it's what's the point? Yeah. Like legitimately, we are dealing with a global crisis right now. Am I really going to get wrapped up with this? No. So that would be, things that come to mind on my end. I mean, when I think of my own personal time I'm spending on the internet, I'm doing tons of webinars and teleconferences and all that kind of stuff. But when I look at how much time I give to diving into conversations with people I have no relationship with whatsoever, and I know it's just to be critical, it ain't worth it, right? Because I know if it's going to arouse stress, it's going to compromise my immune system. Go back to our earlier discussion. I don't want to deal with that right now. I need to keep myself at an intermediate level of arousal, right? That way I can be at my best, and that way I can be at my best for my loved ones and my household to provide that leadership and that role model.
Man, fantastic. I want to speak to this, and then we'll close. I think the final part on the internet side is that, and my business partner, I had to talk about this with future athletes who want to play Division I football, is that this is called My Social Book. I don't know if you've seen it before. All right. This is every.
Can I see the cover of it? I'm just curious what book this. Oh, I love it.
This is every post that I made on Facebook from January 1st, 2014 to April 25th, 2015. Every post, every response, every thread, every picture, everything that I said during that time frame is printed in this book. Now, I could order this year, next year, every year, and guess what? Anybody else can too. And what we told the athletes is, you can make one post on the internet that will stop you from going to college. You can make one post on a thread that will stop you from getting recruited by a certain university. You can make a post that will stop Liberty University from recruiting you, but North Carolina A&T University will keep recruiting you, and you won't even know. Be aware that every post that you make online can be ordered and printed out. And when you have a high-end job where people are paying you six-figure salary and the first number doesn't start with 1 or 2, they will pay a couple $100s to see every post that you've made on the internet in the last 5 years. Trust me on this. People are not spending that type of money on you without doing the background research, and it is available. Your account, whether you think it's private or you think it's this, you think, I am telling you, somebody can go to My Social Book, order every post that you've ever made on Facebook, and get it sent in a volume and read your life. I want to make that point because as you argue on the internet, you're on the internet more, which means you can make more mistakes. Okay? Unless you're Donald Trump, you can't just get on there and say what you want to say. because he's the only guy that really can't get fired right now. He can get fired. He just can't get fired right now. And that's just how it goes. So be careful and be aware. Now, to close, I'm going to say my thing, and I'm going to let you guys say your thing. Just on the Coffee with Rhadi side, but I want to tell you this. Get a schedule. I think it's very important to take walks or bike rides with your kids. Designated time every day. You have to go outside. You can't be cooped up. Also, if you haven't created a weekly movie night, create weekly movie nights. Some of the movies that were in the theaters before, they're now on Prime Video and they're now on Netflix. So you don't have to spend $40 to go to the movies because you got to pay for the tickets and you got to pay for the popcorn and everything else. You can literally go to the store, buy some microwave popcorn, set up a time during the week so that your children know that this is movie night time, either 8 to 10 or 9 to 11 or whatever you choose inside of your home. The next thing, if you're married or you're in a relationship, you can still do date night inside of your house. Date night is now a 90-minute to 60-minute thing, which means everybody has what they need inside of their rooms, and it's a lockdown. Mommy and daddy, or they can move around the house, they can go inside their room, but you have a 90-minute window where everybody can start their phones, hit boom, the timer, and it's 90 minutes. Don't bother mommy and daddy unless it's an extreme emergency. If not, then you reset the 90 minutes so that the children know. Now, you can't do this if you have a toddler or 1 or 2 year old, but if you're in a situation where you have some older children, you have to set these particular boundaries for yourself inside of your house. The other thing, there are tools that Dr. Ericka kind of mentioned. There are chats for people who are experiencing high-end emotional control and emotional abuse. The two things differ. If you're being physically abused in any way, all three of us will tell you the same thing. Find a way to go somewhere, get out, and call someone and go to the authorities. All right, that's just that. I don't believe that people should stay in a situation where they're being hit. I do understand that there are a lot of situations and circumstances where you are caught amongst. My mom used to always make me say, listen, if it's more than two, it's not between, it's amongst. If you're caught amongst being stuck and being trapped, you may be experiencing, as Dr. Gino said, the element where you freeze because you believe you have the inability to fight and you have the inability to flee. But if you find yourself in that moment where you're frozen and you find yourself in that moment where you feel stuck, there are tools available for you online, chat, in terms of chats that Dr. Ericka talked about, and she'll expand on that as she closes, because I don't know exactly what they are. And there's always the emergency number for abuse that you can dial. That's what I have on the Coffee with Rhadi side. I really want some of y'all to drop some of your websites and some of the tools that you have available in the books that you've written. I know you've written some books, Dr. Ericka and Dr. Gino. But Dr. Ericka, you on the close. You go first. You're muted.
Let me unmute.
Okay.
They're doing construction that literally just started in the middle of this, and
it's okay.
I didn't do my usual pro tip, which was try to keep a set of earphones right next to my computer. You had me up too early. I just didn't get it together. My bad. So if I had to say what my parting words are, the first thing is everyone has the capacity to make it through this. So I want everyone to know that number one is part of your capacity to make it through is believing that you can make it through. I realize that we are in this is a global experience that everyone is experiencing potentially differently. So you have to be self-aware and deal with your situation where you're at and not necessarily sit and compare yourself to exactly what every single person is doing. This is a time where some people will get in like one of these achievement modes and hit, as Dr. Gino said, that good intermediate space and just move. There are some people that will need some space and time to process or deal with what's going on. And I don't want a situation where you end up being so hard on yourself because you see this person over here is doing all this stuff and you just feel like you are just tired and just need to take a break and lay on the couch sometime and, sip on one little sip of wine and have an Oreo. I don't want a situation where everyone is feeling guilty because everyone's not dealing with this the same way. So people have the capacity to feel and deal with this differently. The main thing is just to do the best you can. I think that's all we can ask for is for you to do your best And then every day is an opportunity to do better and make sure that you live through this time with love. Tell someone you love them, and just make sure that you work on your mindset to think of, this is an opportunity for me to connect and to learn, instead of I am just stuck. Was I supposed to say where they can find me? I kind of got lost in there somewhere.
All that.
All right.
Everything.
All that. So we'll be talking about my books. I guess there are two that are probably more relevant to this conversation. One is one I co-authored with 9 other Black psychiatrists, called Mind Matters, a resource guide to psychiatry for Black communities. And the information in there works for folks that aren't Black too. There's just additional information that's helpful for Black people. And the other one is actually a children's book called How Amari Learned to Love School Again, a story about ADHD. I did do a book by myself, and that's called Fix Your Fairy Tale, a guide to a woman's life, love, and legacy. But you can find me at Dr. Ericka, that's DoctorEricka on all social media. And I think Dr. Rhadi did mention, I feel like I'm doing a huge plug. I didn't mean to do a plug this long.
No, you have to do a plug.
And I do have a free resource that potentially could be very helpful for you. It's designed to help you have positive energy in the middle of all this stress and all this chaos. It's called Coping with COVID Affirmations. And it's a set of affirmations that are specifically designed around what people are experiencing COVID. So they're not ones that are just totally unrelated. They're specifically designed around being with COVID to help you have a positive energy so that you can move through your day with positivity and be in a space of abundance and not in a space of scarcity and lack. You can find that at covidaffirmations.com. That is covidaffirmations.com. And again, thank you so much for having me. I had the biggest ball. I learned so much. You know, I'm hoping we do it again sometime.
I love it. Dr. Ericka, you are a gem. Let me just tell you, it's such a pleasure spending this time together with Dr. Ferguson and yourself. And I learned a lot myself. So thank you for that opportunity. I think on my end, closing remarks is this. Look, our brains don't like ambiguity. They don't like being in a state of danger, right? So do everything you can in your power to reduce the ambiguity that you are perceiving in your daily life, right? So have those schedules, have those routines set up, have those conversations that you've been meaning to have, but you haven't had just yet, right? Now is the time. Make the harder choice, break certain models you've had into play because the idea of breaking them just didn't feel comfortable. Now is the time to step out of that comfort zone and push yourself to the next level of understanding of who you are and what your purpose is in the big scheme of things. It's amazing, just like, when we talk about making steel, right, or forging something, right, it's a process, right? And a lot of times when you go through the fire is when you come out the strongest. So take this as an opportunity to become even stronger. And as we mentioned before, the quality of the relationship you have with yourself is the quality relationship you can have with others, right? So really tune in to what's going on with you, really break those barriers, unveil that self-knowledge and that self-mastery to push yourself to deal with conflict, adversity, stress, trauma in a way that's going to be amenable and it's going to allow you to grow. So as far as getting a hold of me on all social media, my handle is Dr. Gino Collura. GinoCollura. I have several peer-reviewed articles that are out there. I will give a disclaimer, they're nerdy, so please forgive that, right? I do have a book that's coming out. It's getting released next month. That's going to be in the 7 layers of healthy relationships. So certainly those will be on my social media handles as well, and happy to send copies out to anyone who's interested.
I can't wait to see. That sounds like such a great book.
Yes.
Thank you. Man, I got to put that on my reading list, and it ain't even out yet.
Oh my God!
You know, you're both gonna get a copy because I need some feedback.
Bro, listen, I'm finishing up the second part of my edits for my Getting Unstuck book right now.
I love it.
The Getting Unstuck blueprint. Ya tú sabes. Okay, everybody, está un placer. Si tú vaya con Dios. And thank you so much for your time today. And I always say on my Coffee With Rhadi, I love you, but God loves you best. Take care and have a fantastic day.